You people aren't allowed in here.
It's okay, there was me.
What's going on, guys? My name is Rusty Rance. I'm a top 100 Captain America player, and you may or may not know me. If you don't, and you clicked on this video, appreciate it. And if you do, I just wanted to talk for a second about the recent Marvel Rivals support strike. Now, this wasn't a video that I originally intended on making. It was just going to be something I brushed over. But I called in sick from work today because I'm sick. And so I figured why not discuss it. I mean, this is going to be a really short video, but all I really have to say about it is I get it. I get why people are on strike, you know, and I don't think it's going to be as impactful as people think it is. I think players like me, you know, I am a tank main, but I flex. I play support if it's needed. You know, people are going to step up and play support, and I don't think support players are really going to want to throw their games that much. So just first and foremost, I don't think it's going to be that big of a problem. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and you know, I would respect the players that, you know, stick with it and continue to be on strike, right? But really, what I have to say about it is, I know why it's happening. I know support players feel underappreciated. They don't like that people are constantly calling them boosted. Me included, I'm guilty of it. I call support players boosted a lot, and I feel like playing support in Marvel Rivals is a lot easier than the other roles. Now, there's a caveat to that. Executionally, it might be easier, but in my opinion, I think support requires the most awareness out of all the roles in the game. You have to be aware of what's going on in front of you. Any flankers coming up come behind you. You need to be aware of what your other support is doing. You need to be tracking cooldowns. But that also applies to every character, and I think the mechanics of support, admittedly, are easier than the rest of the cast. Now, obviously, if you compare somebody like Luna Snow to a character like Iron Fist, you know, mechanically, Iron Fist is easier, even if he has a lot more awareness that he needs to have on how he's managing his cooldowns. New Iron Fist is kind of brain dead, you know, I'm an Iron Fist player, but still, I do think there are DPS that are easier than supports mechanically and execution-wise, but generally across the board, DPS is going to require more execution than support does, in my opinion, and I think tank requires the most game sense and just like an overall understanding of every role. You know, I'm probably biased. I'm a tank player, and I really like to go into depth into tank theory and things like that. So for me, I understand the game in a way that a lot of people don't. I'm not saying that I'm better than people because of that. It held me back in Overwatch because my execution was so dog shit, but my understanding of the game was always really good, and that's something that I think a lot of tank players share, and that's why we gravitate towards tank, is we like that feeling of understanding the game on a deeper level. Whereas I think with especially lower rank supports, you know, they kind of just end up heal botting, and Rivals especially encourages supports to heal bot as opposed to getting active, you know. As much as I'm not fond of the game, 5v5 Overwatch really encouraged supports to be proactive and to be taking off angles and to be getting damage and securing eliminations. The best support players were dealing, you know, almost as much damage as they were healing, if not close to, if not more, right? You look at a character like Zenyatta, a character like Baptiste, Lucio players, you know, the exceptions being characters like Moira Mercy and, you know, the healbot characters. But you would see people stacking those stats, but in Rivals you see way less of that. You see it with the Mantis players and the Atom players because that's what they have to do, you know. Their heals are relatively low, so they enable their team while also helping to finish off eliminations. And I think that's great. I think supports in general in games like this shouldn't be so focused on healing as much as they should be DPS characters that can also heal a little bit, you know what I mean? I think that's best for the game. I don't think encouraging heal botting is good for the game, even if a lot of people do prefer that playstyle. I know there are a lot of people out there who really love to heal bot and they like to farm their ultimates and they like to just do whatever they can to, you know, get those clips where they're saving their whole team. And I know it feels good. I'm not a support player, so I'm not going to act like I know what support players need or what they want, but I personally believe that support should be encouraged to do both damage, securing eliminations, as well as, you know, healing. But healing, in my opinion, should be secondary, and Rivals certainly doesn't encourage that. So all of that to say, I understand why support players are striking. I kind of went off on a tangent there. What does this mean for the players that are not playing support, right? What does this mean for them? Let's say a support loads into a game, right, and they're like, oh, well, I'm on support strike, so you know what, I'm going to play Scarlet Witch, I'm going to play Iron Fist, I'm going to play Wolverine, right? Okay, now the DPS player that was in that game, or a tank player, is going to have to fill the role of the support, which I think most people, I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm a Celestial player, so maybe I'm biased, maybe I see a lot more of it. In my opinion, the people who adapt are the ones that are going to climb the most. So you're going to see these players, me included, you know, I'm a tank main, there aren't many of us, right? There are way more DPS and supports than there are tank mains. That's just always the case. But I'm willing to flex to support. I'm willing to flex to DPS, even if I would rather be playing tank, because I adapt for my team, you know, and I want to make sure that we have the best chance of winning. So what's going to happen with this is that support players, whether or not they're good at the game, are going to be on a role that they're not used to. And for a while, they're going to lose, but they might get better. They might get better. And I don't think support players are inherently bad at other roles. I think, you know, they have an understanding of the game. They're going to know how to play. They're going to have a basic idea. And if they play those other characters like, you know, Hela, Punisher, you know, super easy characters to like understand, I think they'll do fine. But I think they're gonna drop rank first, and they're either gonna, one, decide to keep going with it, or two, give up on the strike and go back to playing support, because it's what they know and it's what they're good at. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being good at support, but there's always gonna be people who naysay and say that support is easy and that, you know, you're boosted. There's always going to be that. That always happens. You know, it's the same with people who play tank. You know, we get a lot of shit, especially back in 5v5 Overwatch. If you were the only tank main and you were playing bad in your game, I mean, the amount of shit you got, it was so easy to blame the one tank as opposed to the two DPS or the two supports, because they always had each other to plink off of, but you were just the one tank. So if you were doing bad and the other tank was doing good, you would get flamed hard. You know, I think supports now are realizing what it's like, you know, when there's two tanks now that can take the flack off of each other. It falls more down to who has the better supports in this game. You know, obviously the DPS are just as important. I think the DPS make or break the game, but having good supports behind you is, in this game, when supports are so strong, is what determines how your matches go. So yes, people are more on top of the support players who don't know how to position, who don't know how to heal properly, who don't know how to get their damage and bring value and utility. And you know, most of the time, I would imagine that it's not the support player's fault. It's the egotistical DPS. It's a tank that feels like, man, I'm not getting healed, but not peeling for their supports. You're gonna see that a lot. That's gonna be a lot of your games. And it's just something you kind of got to be okay with. You know, you have a mute button if it's really bothering you that much. Hero shooters always create this class division. Always, no matter what. There's always some division, and it always happens in any competitive game with characters, especially. I come from fighting games, and you see it a lot. You know, I get a lot of respect or I get a lot of shit because I'm a Kazuya main in Tekken, you know, and I'm like, oh, well, they're like, oh, you put, you know, thousands of hours into the practice range, you should be good. And it's like, you know what, I'm still kind of a shitter. I can electric, I can wave dash, but my game sense isn't all there, but I love the character, so I keep playing them. And that's what you should be doing with your support. You shouldn't let what other people say dictate how you play or what you do. You know, I was a Doomfist one trick in Overwatch, and the amount of shit I got for that, especially when I was learning the character, was insane. I mean, I got shit talked every single game. Objectively, I was throwing my games, but you know what? I was having fun and I liked playing them, so I didn't switch. I wanted to get good in them. Eventually I did. I hit Masters. Wasn't a crazy player, but I hit Masters, and you know, I maintained it for a while. Now I'm probably floating around Diamond and 66 Open Queue, Diamond 3 or 4, just because I don't really play Overwatch much anymore. And I hate to keep bringing it back to Overwatch, but it's a good analogy for me, and I apologize to any of my viewers who don't play that game, but for me it makes the most sense to compare it. Adding on to that though, you know, a lot of this is just rambling. My main conclusion is that, you know, every role is hard, and I think as supports flex onto the other roles, they're going to be learning like, damn, okay, tank isn't as easy as I thought. Okay, DPS does require execution. Okay, and they're going to slowly gravitate back to their role. I think the strike is at most going to last a day or two. People who are going to be willing to flex to support, and they're going to learn support because of it. Me personally, support is my least played role. I'm a DPS and I'm a tank main because I don't like playing support, right? I got respect for my support players that do enjoy it, but it's just not for me, and that's okay. And I think the support players are going to find that DPS and tank is either not for them, or they're going to find out that they're better on those roles, and then they're going to keep playing it. And people will do the same when they flex to support, and they're going to find out, damn, okay, I'm actually pretty good at support, and we will not have a problem eventually. Eventually people are going to sort it out, and the strike is going to feel like it never happened. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you really are worried about it, or you've been seeing it a lot in your games, just either learn to play support or stop queuing ranked, and you know, give it a week or two. That's what I've been doing. Is just, I've been taking a break from the game as a whole so that I don't get burnt out on it. I've been playing much less. I still have fun when I get on to play tank or DPS, but you know, I'm not gonna get on if I'm gonna be forced to play support every game. But there are people that are gonna, and the people that are gonna be the ones that adapt, and they're gonna rank up. And that's how it's always going to be. It was the same argument when they were like, oh, no, we're not going to add role queue. You know, I was a big defender of role queue. I was like, no, role queue needs to be in the game, right? That's what I thought for a long time. But the more I played open queue in Rivals, the more I realized, wow, open queue has always been the move. Role queue should have never been introduced into the game. Open queue is so much better because the players that are gonna climb, the players that are meant to climb, are going to adapt, and they're going to fill their roles. They're not just going to insta-lock every time. And if they do, they're going to throw their games, and they're not going to rank up, and that's okay. That's how these games self-moderate themselves in a way. You know, it should be like that. People should have to choose between either playing what they want or winning the game, right? They should. Now me, I'm a tank main, so I don't have to make that option as much, but there are plenty of games where I've had to go support, or I'll have 3 to 4 tanks, and I'll just be like, you know what, fuck it, okay, I'll get on DPS for this game. Or I'm having trouble on tank, and I ask somebody to swap with me. You know, that's the beauty of an open queue environment, where you have that option to flex. And I think this strike is going to remind people that there's always an opportunity to flex. You don't have to insta-lock a role every game, even if it's what I prefer. You know, tank is my preferred role. I love to play tank. I love the feeling of playing tank. I'm still willing to load into a game and insta-lock DPS if I really want to, or even insta-lock support. There have been plenty of times where I've insta-locked on Adam Warlock, and you know, people yell at me and tell me to get off, but I'm like, I'm willing to play Adam Warlock and Loki if nobody else is playing support, you know? I find them fun, and I'll play those characters because they bring utility to the team that the other supports don't have, and I really like that. I don't like the heal bot playstyle. That's not fun for me. But all that being said, I know I said my conclusion a while back, but I just want to reiterate that this strike is going to last at most a week. People are going to adapt, people are going to flex, people are going to learn that they like other roles more than others. Maybe we're going to get a bunch of new support players out of this because they have to flex to play support, or maybe some people are just going to drop a bunch of elo because they keep queuing even though this is going on and they're throwing their games by queuing DPS, by queuing tank while they have no supports, or the support players are just going to fold and they're going to go back to playing support because it's what they like. Obviously, they like playing support, even if they don't appreciate the way that they're treated all the time. That being said, you know, every role has its own difficulties. I think every role in its own is hard and difficult, and they all have their own challenges that they face, and that's why there are roles. You know, they all have different jobs. You can't compare a doctor's job to a guy who works on an oil rig, right? You know, you can't compare the two. They're both hard jobs. They're completely different professions, and one objectively you could argue is easier than the other, right? But there are so many other things that go into it where it's like, okay, but if, you know, we say the doctor's job is easier than the guy who works on the oil rig, what about the doctor who has to deal with all of his patients dying, right? And he has to learn to live with that. The oil rig guy, you know, he's out there breaking his back every day. It sucks. Physically, it's harder, but could the doctor's job be emotionally harder? You know, it's something to think about like that. You know, there are different jobs in every role, right? So obviously it's going to be harder sometimes it's going to be easier, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. We get too caught up in these like class divisions of the roles where people just argue and they want to be right. They want their role to be seen as hard. You know, I'm the same way. I'm a tank player. You know, I think tank is a very difficult role to get really good at because it requires so much game sense, in my opinion, right? And that's my opinion, you know. I want to believe that my role is hard, just like the support players want to believe that theirs is hard, just like the DPS want to believe that theirs is hard. So don't listen to the discussion that people are having about which roles are easiest and who's boosted, you know. Don't feed into it. Just play the game, have fun, play what you want to play. The players that are meant to climb are going to adapt and they're going to flex their roles. Just like me, I'll probably go and end up playing support later today because there are no supports right now. So all that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did, I know this is a little bit different than my regular content. I just wanted to have a chat and give my opinions on this and rant about it, you know, rusty rants, right? But that's gonna be it. If you enjoyed the video, do leave a like. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see my future uploads. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this where I just shoot the shit in chat and ramble and make up points as I go, as they pop into my head. I am sick right now, like I said, so I'm gonna go and work on another video that hopefully I can have up by tonight or tomorrow at the latest. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great rest of the day or night, whatever time it is for you, whenever you're watching this, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.
YouTube thinks that you might like these videos, so go ahead and check them out. Let me know if you do like them. And just a reminder, I do stream on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so I do it right here on YouTube. And if you're here already, you might as well come check me out. Appreciate it if you do. I hope everybody has a great night, and I'll see you guys next time.